Okay, so guys, I'm going to show you how to draw your scales before we start these value scales and our practice squares here. You're going to need two of each, so two 1-inch by 7-inch value scale for here, a 1-inch square for here, and you need to do that again down at the bottom. So again, I'm going to show you guys how to do this. So my recommendation is that you guys, and I find that the acrylic rulers really help a lot on this, use the acrylic ruler. Now we're all using scrap pieces of paper here, so everybody's got just a different size paper. You can draw this just using a regular pencil. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line up here towards the top. So if you guys take a look, up here at the top, 7 inches long. Okay, so draw there 7 inches long. Now, I'm going to show you how you can make sure, and this is basically the same technique I used to help you guys create the big 2-inch blocker. So what you're going to do, I'll zoom in on this, to make sure you're actually drawing a nice perpendicular line here. If you guys notice on your ruler, on these acrylic rulers, there's a line that's right here that goes across the ruler. If you put that and make it so that it lines up with the line you just drew, you will have a 90-degree angle right there. So I'm going to draw then a 1-inch line after I got that lined up, like so. And then I'm just going to turn my paper again. Let me zoom back out. Turn my paper again. Again, line up that line that's right there at the 0 mark. So that way it lines up, and I know I'm making a 90-degree angle here. I'm going to now draw this bottom line 7 inches. And then I should, have 1 inch left here just to close up the gap. Okay? So that is a 1-inch by 7-inch scale, okay? But I need to separate the boxes. So now I'm going to go in and break this up 1 inch on the top and bottom, and then I'll join those lines. So I'm going to take my ruler, and you want to be very accurate with this and precise. I'm going to mark it every inch. I'm going to do that at the top and at the bottom so I know where I need to draw these lines. I need your passbook. Fill it out and I'll sign it. So then, once I get those marks on the top and the bottom, I am going to connect these to create 7 1-inch boxes. So there's my scale for the first one, okay? I'm going to do the same thing under here. Now where I put this one, again, everybody's got a different size paper, so you be the judge, but I'm just going to kind of put this about right here. Alright, so I'm going to put this kind of in the middle. I'm going to do this the same way, so for anybody who didn't understand how I did it the first time, you can watch this again. I'm going to start by just drawing a 7-inch wide line across like that. And then to make sure that I have a 90-degree angle here and I've got my ruler straight, I'm going to take this line on the ruler and I'm going to put that right on top of the line that I drew. As long as I've got them matched up, that should guarantee me a nice straight line. So now I drew that an inch. I'm just going to keep turning this around. Doing the same thing. Line up the line here on the ruler with the line that I drew. Once I've got that, draw another 7-inch long line. And I should have an inch left. And now I have to go through and break this up into the individual squares. So I'm going to mark every inch along the top and the bottom. So now I've got both of my scales. For the squares, you guys should all have templates at your table. I'm just going to use the template for the little practice squares that I'm going to eventually use. And all you have to do is locate the inch square. They are labeled. If you have one of the green templates, it's going to be the square down here in the lower right-hand corner. And all I'm going to do is just draw that up here next to each scale. Give it a little bit of distance. If you don't have room to put this right next to your scale, you can also put it below it or somewhere else on that paper, since we all are working with different sizes of paper. So there you go. Okay? That's what it should look like. I'll show you my finished one again. And again, you don't have to label this with your Sharpie like I did. I just did it that way so you guys could see it in case you question what that measurement needs to be. Okay, so I'll give you guys some time to work on that, and then I'll show you how to start these. Alright, so what we're going to do, if you guys look up here at the top, I've got labeled white color pencil and graphite. So the first scale we're going to do is we're going to use the graphite pencils, white color pencil, and then down here on the bottom one we're going to use white charcoal and charcoal pencils. So I've got written here what you need. You should have a 4H pencil, which is this one right here. They're labeled on the end. You should have a 3B pencil, again labeled on the end, 6B pencil, and then white color pencil. So, if you were to kind of put these so that they're lighter to darker, it would be like this. White color pencil, 4H, 3B, 6B. 6B is your darkest one. You also need to have a kneaded eraser, which if you have any of the ones that are still in the wrapper, you need to make sure that that is taken out of the wrapper. You're not going to be using a pink eraser, and the reason why is that if you try to use a pink eraser on some of this stuff, and eventually we'll have a lot of layers, it just kind of smears the media. It doesn't actually erase it away. The kneaded eraser is going to be the one that's probably going to be more helpful. At least that's just what I feel about it. So I'm not going to be really using this at all. All right? So what I want you guys to do, you can kind of hold your pencils in your hand, sort of in the order that they go from lightest to darkest. This might help you guys from trying to take, any time away from just checking to see what pencil you're using. So if you always keep them in your hand in the order from lightest to darkest, it'll save you time just looking at the labels on the pencils. But I have been known to use the wrong pencil in the wrong area. That is not abnormal for me. Okay, so I'm going to zoom this in a little bit. Now remember that for a value scale, the idea here is that you go from lightest to darkest, okay? So, in this situation, what's our lightest? Yes, white. So I'm going to start with white. Now you might want to watch me start this first before you guys start. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a very thin layer of white color pencil in the first box, and I'm actually going to take it, this thin layer, all the way to box 3. And again, I want you to take a note of just how thin I'm using this. I'm not putting any pressure down, not pressing hard at all. You can still see the texture of the paper coming through. And there's a reason for that. It'll make more sense as we go through here. So when you're doing this, you do want to make sure that you take your time to do a nice even layer. So if you notice any patchiness along the way, you want to address that. So I'm going to stop it right here at box 3. Okay? Now I'm going to be drawing lines underneath here just so that you guys can, so I can illustrate what is under each box and how many times I did it. You do not have to do it, but this is just as a reference. So I'm just going to put a line right here just to show that I did a layer of white color pencil underneath the first 3 boxes. Okay? I'll give you a minute to kind of fill that in. Now remember, this is going to be lightest to darkest. So on a grayscale or a value scale, this needs to be what? This first box. What's it need to be completely? White. Okay? So I'm going to go over, and this time I'm really going to put down quite a lot of pressure and just go ahead and get this so that it looks like a pretty solid white. So this time I am putting down pressure. Holding down the pressure pretty good. Pressing the paper down, filling in the tooth of it. You can see what that looks like now. Now most likely I'll probably go over this again just right before I kind of finish it, and that's fine, but that's good enough for me right now. Now remember, with a value scale you want equal steps between values. So what I'm going to do on this second box is I'm going to add just a very thin, light layer on top. So I'm going to do a second layer on top of this. So I want to go kind of between these two. I need something that's between these two. So I don't want it to be as bright as this, and I don't want it to be as dark as that. So I just need to add a little bit of something on top. So I'm using very light pressure for this. So I can gradually build it up and just hopefully prevent myself from overdoing it. So here's the thing with white color pencil, you can't really take it away once it's on there. It does not erase well at all. So I'm going to go back over that and just kind of brighten this up. Okay. So essentially I put more layers there. So I'm okay with this right now. That's not to say again that I'm not going to go through and do some more adjustments. I probably will. But this is a start. Just don't know how I need to fix it up until I do more. Alright, so what I'm going to do next, I gotta put that in order. I'm going to take my 4H pencil. So this is the lightest pencil that I have. Okay? This is the lightest pencil. So I'm using the 4H, so check to make sure you're using the right one. And I'm going to go ahead and start in the third box. So not over here in the first, not in the second, but in the third box. And I am going to put a layer of graphite on top of that layer of color pencil. So they're going to kind of blend together. And then I'm going to take this all the way down very lightly. Again, I'm not putting much pressure at all down on my pencil. Just lightly guiding it across the paper. So it's not, I'm not pushing down in the paper, causing indents. Just basically laying down a thin layer. I always have to slow down a little bit at the end just because I want to keep all this shading inside of my scale. I don't want to go past these edges. And then I just go back through and just make sure, if I see any patchiness, I kind of go in and fill it in. All right. So if you look at it this way, you guys can see your middle box is going to be this one right here, box 4. You have 3 in front of it, you have 3 behind it. So this should be our 50-50 sort of gray. So what I'm going to do now for this is I'm going to go through and I'm going to go ahead and do another layer. So when I need to draw my line here so you guys can see. And I'll write 4H there. So now I'm going to go over this, and this time, if you guys notice, I'm kind of going over my shading in a different direction. So this time I'm kind of going at a diagonal, and that just helps kind of fill in the texture of the tooth of the paper. And I'm going to carry this, again, all the way through to the end. Taking this all the way through. Alright, so I did a second layer of 4H from box 4 all the way down to the end. Okay? I know that's kind of hard to see. So the hope is I've got my first 4 boxes kind of started. I need to continue to gradually make these darker, but my 4H pencil is not going to be dark enough to make these 3 different. So I'm going to switch. Now I'm going to switch to my 3B pencil. I'm going to start now in box 5. And I'm going to again do a thin layer. So a thin layer. I do thin layers just because I can better kind of catch mistakes before they happen in my work. So if I take my time, I really look at what it is that I'm doing, I can again catch those mistakes before they happen. And it gives me more room too to make adjustments along the way. If you commit too early, a lot of times you lose on the opportunity to fix it. So again, that's why I said this portrait is not something that can be rushed. You need to make sure that if you do get behind, you get caught up right away. Alright, so I did a layer of 3B from box, let's see, that's 5 to 7. I'm just going to go through and make sure I don't have any patchiness here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another layer of 3B, so I'm still with my 3B pencil, now in box number 6. I am putting just a bit more pressure down on my pencil, so I'm not as light as what I was before in the last layer that I did. And I'm going to do the same thing here in the last box. So again, I'm just using the 3B pencil again. Again, before I move on, I always make sure I don't have any patchiness. Fill it in if I do, which I always do. Okay, so I did another layer of 3B. It's underneath the last two boxes. So to get this dark, now I'm going to move on to my 6B pencil, which is my darkest pencil that I have. You will also notice that physically it's just a much softer lead, so it's really, really soft material. So now I'm going to go in with this in my last box, and this time I'm going to really put down a lot of pressure so I can make this really dark. So I'm pressing pretty hard.
What pencil are you using?
I'm using the 6B. Yeah, using the 6B now. And again, I'm putting down quite a lot of pressure because I want to get this really, really dark. So just like the white, I put a lot of pressure down on that to make it really white. On the other side of it, I want to make this really dark. So I want to get this as black as I possibly can. Now remember what I said, the differences between charcoal and graphite. Graphite's more of a gray color, whereas charcoal is a true black. So you'll see a difference when we do the other scale. So there's that. Once I kind of go through those layers, then what I do as a little test, I take my hands and I just cover up, just kind of show the first two. And I want to see again a nice change between those two. And then when I move to the next one, I want to see the same step. And I'm not sure I see the same step right there for mine. And then again, look at these two. I want to see a step, a step, a step, and a step. I want to see equal change between each step. If there's too much change between these, like I think maybe there might be not enough between these two and maybe not enough between these two, so I need to kind of deal with that. So it might mean that I go back and adjust stuff. I'm going to go back and just go over my white more. I think this needs a little bit of help. So I just go through now at this point and just kind of get picky and make adjustments. And a lot of times when you do something to one thing, it causes a chain reaction. And in some situations, I'm not necessarily using the same pencil I did originally in there, so it's just you gotta make a judgment call. You know, is the pencil you're using doing the job? If it's not, maybe you need to switch. So you gotta really kind of read it. Feel better about that. Alright, so I'm going to give you guys a chance to work with that, okay? And then I will show you how to move on to the white charcoal and charcoal one. Okay, so now I'm going to show you guys how to do the charcoal scale down here at the bottom. So you need 4 different pencils. You need a white charcoal, okay? You need an HB. These keep rolling on me so you can't see it. So again, the labeling is at the end of the pencil. So you need an HB. You need a 2B. And then you need a 6B. Okay? And again, have a kneaded eraser handy. You're probably not going to use it that much on these scales. You're probably going to use this more so on the practice squares that we're going to do. Okay? So I'm going to get rid of this. So again, do the same thing. Hold your pencils in your hand in order of lightest to darkest. Again, that will hopefully save you guys time from having to check your pencils every 5 seconds on what it is that you're doing. Okay? I'm going to zoom in. We're going to basically kind of start this the same way we did the graphite scale. Okay? So I'm going to start with my white charcoal. Now just a little tip on these pencils. Because charcoal is so soft, because your pencils are so soft, the tips on them break very easily. So when I sharpen these, I don't sharpen them to a really sharp point because it's just not possible. They just break, okay? So you'll notice that these are kind of dull compared to the graphite pencils. Like the graphite pencils you can sharpen to a point, but these you just can't. They're too soft. And it does seem like, too, that the manual pencil sharpeners aren't necessarily the best thing for them. You can use the mechanical one or the electric pencil sharpeners in the spray booth to help you. But I don't sharpen these a whole lot, okay? So I'm going to take my white charcoal, and I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I am going to, and you'll notice this is so soft, guys, it doesn't take much. I'm going to lightly fill in, very, very lightly, the first 3 boxes, just like I did on the color pencil and graphite scale. So charcoal is so much more sensitive than the graphite. It's much softer. So if you're somebody who has a heavy hand, like that's just natural for you, charcoal may not be what you want to use. But if you're somebody who has a lot of control, then you may want to use it. Again, you guys should be able to make your decision on what you want to do after you do these exercises. So again, after I get that thin layer, I'm going to go through and just kind of address any patchiness I might have. So it just kind of looks nice and even. So I've done a layer, and I'm just, again, you guys don't have to do these lines. This is just for instruction purposes. I did a layer of white charcoal underneath those first 3 boxes. Now, this is my first box. I need to make it white just like that one. So now, what am I going to do?
Press hard.
Yep, I'm going to press hard. And trust me, guys, you're going to notice real quickly it doesn't take much. I'm not even pressing quite as hard as what I did on the color pencil. You'll notice that the charcoal has a much kind of drier feeling than the color pencil. Color pencil has that wax in the media and the oil. So they're kind of softer, but this is like a drier soft. Kind of like how my hands feel after doing a ceramics project with Fine Art 1 for 3 weeks. Alright, so I filled that up. Could I do more? Sure. I'll do that later. Okay, but there's my white. Alright, so now I want this box right here to be in the middle of these two. Okay? So I'm just going to try to lay down just another thin layer of white charcoal on top of here. Again, you gotta be real careful because charcoal is really soft. Just gonna do a thin layer. And again, that always causes me to do something else. I'm going to go back to my white one and just go ahead and try to get more media down. Kind of getting those grooves. Very lightly going over the second one. Alright, so I've essentially gone over these first two boxes again, but that first box I went in and added quite a few more layers, so that's why I'm going to do it that way. Okay? So what pencil do you think I'm going to use next? I heard somebody say it. HB, yes. So use the HB pencil. Now you're going to notice, guys, that even though we have 3 different charcoal pencils, you're going to notice that even though this is our lightest charcoal pencil, the HB, it's still pretty dark. So you want to be very light-handed with this, okay? I'm going to take the HB, and I'm going to do the same thing I did with the graphite. I'm just going to go over it, very thin layer, over this third box, and I'm going to take it all the way down. Very thin, all the way down. So you got to be able to really control this media. So you'll notice already, because I had that layer of white charcoal underneath here, and then as soon as I go to that fourth box, I can just see the difference between the look of the media with the white charcoal underneath and nothing underneath it. Just charcoal on paper. So again, I'm keeping this very light. With charcoal, you don't need to put much pressure down. Taking this all the way down to the last box. Again, take your time, especially when you get down here at the end. You want to keep your stuff looking really nice and clean. It doesn't matter to me that this is practice or your final project. You always need to take craftsmanship into consideration. Okay? So I'm going to draw on here where I put this. So this is a layer HB. You can just see how dark this HB can get when I press down on it. I mean, it can get pretty dark. Alright, so I'm going to go over and do this. I'm going to use the HB pencil again, but this time I'm going to put another layer on top, just like I did the graphite. Still keeping my pressure really light, just because I'm not ready to commit to these darker values quite yet. So this is a second layer of HB, but I started on box 4. Okay. So There's for that. Okay, so now what do you think I'm going to switch to? What pencil's next? 2B. So 2B, I'm going to start now in box 5. Again, nice thin layer. Got to go from the 5th box all the way down to the 7th box. You can see as you get darker with the charcoal pencils, you're seeing that black color. It's not gray. So if you like the gray look, graphite might be what you want. So if you like the gray or the black, go for the charcoal. Alright, so that was 2B pencil. Kind of hard to see. So that's my 2B. Went from 5 to 7. Now I'm going to do another layer. And I'm at the point now which, you know, with every layer I add, I am putting some more pressure down. I wouldn't say that I'm really pressing down hard, but I'm kind of like in between. And you'll notice too, you'll see that there's a lot of charcoal dust on top of there. You just kind of blow it off, it'll disappear. Alright, so last but not least, my favorite thing to do is do the last one, 6B. So this is your darkest one. This is going to go, I need to write on here what I did. So now I need to take the 6B and I really want to put the pressure down. I want to kind of get in those little grooves on the paper, fill those up. You'll kind of hear your charcoal kind of squeak. And every once in a while, since I am pushing down pretty hard, I'm going to get a lot of that charcoal dust. So I'm kind of blowing that away as I work so I can see what I'm doing. I can hear all your guys' pencils squeaking. And you'll notice too, you'll lose the point of your pencil really quickly. Now, a lot of people feel the urge, whether they're working with graphite or charcoal, to take their finger or put a tissue around their finger and try to, they think what they're doing is blending it in, but what they're basically doing is smudging it all, and smudging is not good. So I always feel like I'm a believer that you let the media do all the blending for you. So if you're having a hard time of blending in areas sometimes, and I'll tell you with the graphite pencils, I think a 4H pencil, even in the darker areas, is great for blending. And I would say the same is true for like the charcoal too. So now, once you kind of get down to the end of the line, get picky. Like I'm going to go in and I want to really make this box down here, my first box, more white. I want to make it pretty intense to kind of match the intensity of that black on the other side. And if I can bump this up a notch, that gives me more room to work with in the middle of my scale. Again, the harder you press, you will find you get that charcoal dust. Just blow it away and you're fine. I actually feel okay about this. So now's the time to just get picky. Again, do your little test where you block off just 2 of these boxes. Do the next 2, do the next 2, and you want to see equal jumps between them. Okay? Kind of scan this out. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes here to finish. And then we'll start talking about the 1-inch practice squares. Alright, so what you're going to do for these practice squares is similar to what we did on the oil pastel project where I wanted you to select an area to practice. And I would choose an area that you feel like you would want to have 2 chances at getting it right rather than just 1 chance. So, if you notice, these are just 1-inch boxes. It's the same size as the boxes that we used here. I understand the blocker is bigger, but you're only going to do 1 of these squares. So I'm choosing the one right here that has the eye and the eyebrow in it because there's a lot of going on. And again, I'd like to have the opportunity to practice that twice and not once. Okay? So what I've done is I've lightly drawn in some parts of this. Okay? I've lightly drawn in part of it. I'll tell you what, maybe it's best I get rid of that. Zoom back out. That will work a little bit better. So what I've done is I've drawn a little bit. As you can see, I have eyebrows that are going to be in this corner, but I didn't put that in there because I felt like it was easier for me to just draw those in as I go. Okay? So what I'm going to do, I like to attack the darkest areas first. The reason why is because, for me, I think that helps me map out everything. When I look at that, I see that the eyelashes, even the iris and the pupil, and parts of the eye here, like in the creases, are pretty dark. Eyebrows are up here, so I'm going to kind of wait for that later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right into my 6B pencil. And I'm going to go ahead. This is, again, the graphite. I'm going to go in with my graphite pencil and go ahead and get those dark areas established. I actually need my pencil sharpened a little bit more. So my pencil just wasn't sharp enough. A lot of times if I have an area that's kind of small that I need to sharpen, I do like to use just a regular pencil eraser. I'm going to try and cut into that. There we go. Alright. Put that back on there. And you guys can see too, I'm using my blockers. So again, just putting in my darks. And again, tight areas, the best eraser you can ever use is your pencil. And then from there I choose, depending on what I need. I'm going to start shading that stuff in. I've kind of got the eyelid here kind of mapped out. I have some highlights here that I want to make sure that I get, and I can go ahead and plug that in with the white color pencil. Again, feel free, if you're in these tight areas like I am, having a sharper pencil does help. And I'm just, again, choosing the pencil based on the value that I'm working with. Alright, so right now I am going to go ahead and start with the eyebrows. And again, with the eyebrows, it was easier for me to just kind of draw them in as I go. If you are working on the eyebrow area, just pay attention to the variation in the length of the hair, the direction of the hair, because it all goes in different directions. I'm just starting with the 4H in this situation to kind of help me map out where they need to go. And I go through. Now, because we're working on the gray paper, you guys can also too play around with leaving the paper show through in areas where you feel like the tone of the paper works for your value. You do not have to cover up everything. Something else too that you might notice on with the graphite is that it can be very shiny, and I can tell definitely on my screen how shiny this stuff is looking. But the graphite it kind of gets that shine. And as you guys can see, at least on mine, I'm waiting till the end to pop in these eyelashes. Okay, so I think I'm ready for eyelashes. I'm going to sharpen my pencil. Got a little messy here. Okay. Alright, I know that's hard to see because it's so shiny, but there you go. Alright, so move on, and you guys can do the charcoal whenever you're ready. And hopefully you guys can, after these exercises, decide if you're going to do graphite or if you are going to do charcoal.